One of the things I really take pride in here at Test Drive is being able to feature older cars. Now, typically our classic car coverage starts at anything from 2006 and older, but recently we have been doing some newer things. As vehicles start to enter into the used market, it makes sense to have videos up that are on older cars that aren't necessarily classics. Enter this 2014 Ford Expedition XLT. Now, this vehicle has been brought to us by Excellence Auto here in Actonville. They reached out to me to see if I'd be interested in featuring this Expedition, and I really was. This is one of the best examples you're going to be able to find for sale right now in Canada. Now, the Expedition was based on the F-150's platform. It was a modified version to accommodate an SUV. Instead of having rear leaf springs, you had a regular SUV suspension in the back. There was an optional air suspension as well. But this XLT is essentially the entry-level trim sold here in Canada. Now, over the course of the 10-year production run from 2007 to 2017, there weren't many changes until 2015. So this is a pre-facelift. Pretty much cosmetically from 2007 to 2014, they remained about as identical. There were some small changes here and there, and really for 2014, the only major difference was the lack of different trims. The XLT was the entry level. You also had the Limited and the King Ranch. Now, I say this is a prime example because, first of all, it's black, and a lot of people like big black SUVs, but also the mileage on this is pretty low for the age. It's only got 86,000 kilometers. And if you're wondering how long these can last, I was taking a look at Auto Trader last night to see roughly what's available in the third generation Expedition market, and most of the ones for sale have over 200,000 kilometers. Many of them had over 300,000 kilometers, and I even found a few third-gen Expeditions with over 400,000 kilometers. So if they're well maintained, you shouldn't have any issues with it. Now, if you've come from an older F-150 or an Expedition, this should be a pretty familiar vehicle. Ford wanted to make a full-size SUV on the F-150 platform to compete with the Chevy Tahoe, and I'd say that this competes very well with that. While the Expedition isn't Ford's top-selling SUV, it still marks an important segment for the company. Before, in the mid-2000s, there was the Ford Excursion. That was based on Ford's Super Duty truck platform, much like a Chevrolet 2500 Suburban. However, they dropped that as it wasn't a volume seller and offered this with an extended wheelbase, much like the Suburban. So think of this as the Chevy Tahoe competitor, and then if you were to get either the EL in the US or the Max in our market and other markets, think of it like the Suburban. Plenty of space, even though this is the short wheelbase version. Now, there isn't too much to go over on the exterior. It makes sense for what you would expect a big Ford to have. It has headlights, fog lights, and a aftermarket backup camera was installed, which can really help when parking a vehicle of this size. But it's the inside that we'll talk about to go over some of the features and design elements there, so that if you are in the market for the third generation Ford Expedition, you'll be better equipped to make a purchase. Before we jump on the road to talk about the drive, ride, and feel of the Ford Expedition, I just want to give you a quick rundown of what you have on the interior here. As an XLT, it doesn't have a ton of features. I'd say the one thing that I am disappointed with, coming from my own 2006 Ford Focus, there's no front heated seats. Now, my Focus was technically the second trim up, but I mean, there's like an 8-year difference in terms of model year. Why does mine have heated seats and this doesn't? I'm sure if you went up to either the Limited or the King Ranch, you would have had it. But the thing is, this was the base trim for 2014. They actually did have an XL for some of the model years before that, even less features, and I can't imagine what you would have gotten less, because this is well equipped for the year, and probably for the price too when it first came out, but you don't have a ton of features. Up front, the center console stack is very similar again to my Ford Focus. In fact, it is really the same head unit, though this one does have Bluetooth, so if you do have a phone you want to be able to connect to it, that's a nice plus to have. Plus, it does have XM satellite radio, so you can listen to that and subscribe if you want. There's no climate control, it's just fan speed selector and temperature in the front. You've got a fan speed selector and temperature gauge in the center, and then the rear third row also has its own zone. And again, it's not automatic and it's not climate control, but you do have 3-zone air conditioning and heating, roof mounted vents that are nice to have, and incandescent light bulbs throughout. Getting in and out of the second or third row isn't too bad. The seats in the middle here are pretty flexible. You can fold them flat, and you also have a cargo mode to be able to put everything flat, to use this more as a utility hauler than it is a people hauler. So you can configure things the way that you want, and as an 8-passenger vehicle, you can fit quite a few people in here. I'm pretty comfortable back here. Good headroom, good space overall. If I was being driven around, I would be pretty happy. Even with the cloth seats, they're nice and comfortable. Now, what else about this that you need to know? Power windows, power locks, power mirrors. It's to be expected. The rear third row windows do pop out. There is a control knob for it in the driver section, and that's about it. There's no sunroof on this trim, and the trunk, the liftgate, is manually operated. This is what you would expect at the entry level for 2014. And if you look at a new Expedition, specifically if you go up to the top end trim, I mean, it's just loaded with technology. This feels a little bit more connected to the road. Now let's take this on a road test and go over everything else you need to know if you're in the market for the 2014 third generation Ford Expedition. The first thing that I noticed, absolute first thing when I got into the Ford Expedition, was just how quiet this vehicle is. This is Lincoln Navigator in terms of quietness. I'm really impressed, and considering it's 6 years old, it's really good. Now, I drove the Navigator a few years ago, and it was very impressive, but considering this is the previous generation, this is nice. If you're looking for a comfortable, quiet car, I would definitely suggest taking a look at this one. It is what you would expect. Now, because this is such a big SUV, you have to keep an eye out around you. It does have rear parking sensors, which is nice, and the backup camera is a nice plus too, so happen to have that all hooked up really well, looks really professional, then you're in business. But aside from that, you're getting what you pay for. This uses a 3-valve 5.4 liter Triton V8 engine. It's tried and true. You can look online and find that you're going to have people that either prefer the 2-valve or the 3-valve, or they just want to skip out completely on the Triton. But this is the last time this was offered in the Expedition. Ford moved to their 3.5 liter V6 EcoBoost engine. So if you want a V8, this is the one to go for, and the model year in order to get that. Now, it is decent power, 310 horsepower, 365 pound-feet of torque out of a 6-speed transmission. It's decent. Yeah, you go up to the EcoBoost and you do have more power, but yeah, a lot of people like that naturally aspirated V8 feel. And even though the ride and everything is quiet, so is the engine. You don't necessarily feel like you're driving a V8 because it is just really nice in here. Now, the main reason people like these big SUVs, aside from the overall space, you have a lot of cargo and passenger space, is the ride on this. This is superb on the road. You feel very little of the bumps, much like we find when we drive the pickup trucks, and that's why these are so unique. They are based on pickup truck platforms. The Expedition, the Excursion, if you find an older one, is incredible, but the way that this is engineered takes the best of what a pickup truck has to offer, being a body-on-frame design, but then mixing it with actual independent suspension instead of leaf springs in the back, so the ride back there is good. If you have passengers in that third row, they're not going to be too upset with you if you go over some big bumps. But so far, I'm really impressed with it. I wasn't sure what to expect when I got behind the wheel of this, but man, it is nice. And the fact that these can last pretty much forever is a great plus. If you're buying one like this, super low mileage, incredibly well maintained. I mean, when I went through this car, filmed all the B-roll, filmed all the exterior stuff. I mean, it is so clean. This is really good. So if you're looking for something like this, try to get a low mileage one just so that you don't have any issues. There's no check engine lights, no issues with it. Everything's done and working as you would expect from a essentially brand new car. And this one's only got the 86,000 kilometers on it. Now, pricing for these can range. Huge discrepancy between the first model years of this third generation all the way up to the 2017. This one's priced at about $26,000 Canadian. The high end can get up to $40,000 for a 2017, and then you can get as low as about $2,000 for about a 2007. Those are usually high mileage and really beaten up. So it depends on what you want. And because these were used as police vehicles, you know that they are tried and true. Cops aren't going to use things that don't work. That's why they used the Crown Victoria and really bled that out as long as they could, because it was one of the best police cars ever made. And same thing with this. I know it wasn't as popular here in Canada to see the Ford Expedition police unit, but still, The fact that they had them mostly as K9 units here in Canada shows that they were worth buying. And even today, 6 years on, yeah, you can tell that this is a 6-year-old car, and okay, some of the stuff on the inside here makes it feel like it's older, but it works, and it's comfortable, and it's quiet, and everything that you want out of it, it just does. Look at that handling too. I mean, I took that corner, had a truck up my ass, no problems whatsoever, not even close to wide open throttle. We're about 50%, and we're up to speed in no time. This is what you want out of a big SUV. Really impressive. Like I say, I mean, I'm always open to whatever I get into, but for this, I was just expecting sort of an F-150 experience, and I'd be like, yeah, okay, you know, we're gonna go through the features, it's gonna be fun, but I really do like it. I know what I'm going to be doing tonight. I'm going to be looking at finding one of these myself. I don't know how much I can get trade-in value on my Ford Focus, but it's definitely not going to make a chunk out of the price on this one, but I think it's worth every penny of it. A couple other things to note about this, since it basically is based off a pickup truck. You do have the transfer case selector. We have 2 high right now. You can go to 4 automatic, 4 high, and 4 low. We're not messing with any of that right now because it is very nice weather. You do have the tow haul mode if you push the little button on the gear selector. So if you are towing or hauling something, you want to have a little bit more power out of it. Obviously, the newer vehicles have slightly more control. You have sport modes and things like that, but for basic functionality, this is really good. And you can put it into a lower gear if you are towing. When configured properly, this could tow up to 9,000 pounds, which is really impressive if you are bringing a huge trailer, you want to have a boat, you want to have something massive, because for the most part, the mid-size crossovers and SUVs sold today get about 5,000 pounds. So you're looking at almost double for that. And yeah, MSRP for a new Expedition is quite a bit. This has come down considerably over 6 years. And with the maintenance and everything on this, it's really good. Overall, I don't think you're going to be disappointed if you end up finding one of these. If it's on your list for vehicle you want to buy, as I said, it's definitely surprised me as I got into here. And the maintenance as well is not going to be that big of a deal. Depending on how much you're going to be doing yourself, can help to offset it. But now let's go back to the studio. We'll talk about what you need to look for in terms of a buyer's guide if you're in the market for this, so that you are better informed when it comes time to buy. As we come to the conclusion of this episode of Test Drive Spotlight on this 2014 Ford Expedition XLT, we want to go over some of the common issues and things to look out for if you're in the market. We call it a buyer's guide. It's a light version of what we would do if we had a vehicle for a longer period of time. But the point is, there isn't much to go wrong with this vehicle. As I mentioned, there are plenty available with high mileage without many issues. The one thing that I found by going on different Ford forums, such as fordforum.com or Blue Oval forums, is that if you do the maintenance on the engine will be pretty much solid. If you're going for something that has higher mileage, you're probably going to end up with something that's a little rougher depending on how it was taken care of. This vehicle at 86,000 kilometers honestly looks like it could have come out of a dealership showroom. It's in such great condition. But since these were used for fleet, police use, and just driving around and using them as a regular family hauler, there is some wear and tear that can come down with them. Now, one of the things to look out for is the rear glass can start to leak. Since it's a separate piece of glass on top of the tailgate, that can start to leak over time. Also, some of the early adopters of this generation noted bumps and clunks as they were driving along, and that could be an issue with the torque converter. The air suspension can leak if you have that option, and also the blower motor can go out early on. Now, that seems to be a pretty common problem across the board, both for this and the F-150. That does require some work, but from what I've been able to find online, if you know enough about working on cars, it should be something you can do on your own. Also, the transmission can start to shudder at cruising speeds, again, depending on how much driving this vehicle has done. That's something that you'll have to take it into a transmission shop to have looked at. But again, there's nothing that's a major red flag. As we always recommend, take it to a mechanic before buying it, have them inspected, and go over everything about the vehicle. Service history is crucial if you want to know everything that's been done to it. And for the most part, these are pretty reliable. I am impressed when I look at a car online and it's maybe 10, 12 years old and it has 400,000 kilometers on it. That tells me that these will last. And with a low mileage example like this, You're gonna get a lot of life out of this one. Now, if you're interested in buying this specific car, you better be quick. The other vehicles that we featured from Excellence Auto here in Actonville all sold really quickly after we featured them on Test Drive. And as I mentioned, this is such a good example. I think it's going to go quick. Now, if you have any questions about this 3rd generation Expedition or anything, just leave a comment below and I will do my best to get back to you. We do hope to get a 2021 Expedition in the new year to be able to show you what the latest generation has to offer, but this one is still pretty impressive. Thanks for watching, and until next time, take care.